Welcome to Module 2 of Research and Evaluation. This module will cover three main types of experimental validity that we should consider when we're designing or reading about our studies, as well as sources of bias that might influence the studies we develop or read about. Now, I just want to begin by saying that I'm going to cover just a small amount of information in this video. There's much more information in the slides that I posted for you to review, as well as in your text. So I encourage you to take a look at both of those documents, both of those pieces of information, to get sort of a better idea about what we're talking about What I really want to do with the video portion of this lecture is just get you to begin thinking about what's the importance of validity, what types of validity there are to consider, sources of biases, these types of things. So let's begin by talking about a hypothetical vignette. Now we know that the purpose of empirical research is to study in a controlled manner relationships between variables. And as we talked in Module 1, there can be many different findings coming from studies on the same topics. So let's talk about the following example. So let's say that we're interested in studying the effect of an anger management treatment on girls who have been detained for charges of violence against others, so assault or assault and battery. So let's say that we go into the detention facility and we ask 10 girls to participate in an 18-week intervention, anger management program. The girls agree, so we give them a pre-test and ask them all about the different aggressive behaviors that they're involved in, the frequency of these aggressive behaviors, those kinds of things. We put them in the 18-week intervention and we give them a post-test asking them about the same questions. We can also collect third-party information, so the records from the facilities about disciplinary reports or aggressive behaviors or fights or anything that the girls have been involved in. So we collect all this information, take a look at it, and we find that the anger management treatment was effective. We find that the girls' aggressive behaviors had significantly decreased at the end of the intervention compared to the beginning. So can we conclude then that our treatment was effective? Well, as you are probably thinking right now, there's a lot of other confounding factors that may have influenced the results. It might not just have been the treatment. So, for example, one of those things might be, the girls are in a confined, structured environment where all of their actions have consequences. So over an 8-week period of time, they may have learned, if I fight, I'm getting in trouble, I'm not going to fight anymore. That has nothing to do with our intervention. That's called history. So that's a threat to the internal validity that is really looking to see whether our intervention reduced the aggressive behaviors or whether there was something else going on. In the case that I just gave you, something else may have been going on, but we didn't account for it. And so we have the threat to our internal validity of our study, and we can't say with confidence that our treatment program actually worked to decrease the aggressive behaviors. So what can we do to try to bolster our findings that our treatment program is actually working? Well, one thing we might be able to do is create a control group to sort of tell us how the normal behavior patterns of the girls in the facility are, so we can account for those behaviors. So we take our 10 girls who are in our program, and then we take another 10 girls who are also charged with similar crimes, who are of the same age, who have been in the detention center about the same amount of time, those kinds of things. And we give them the pre and the post-test measures at the same time we do with the girls in the intervention, except those girls don't get the intervention. That's our control group. Now, if we, at the end of our 18-week session, we're doing our comparisons and we find that our girls in the treatment center have significantly lower post-test scores on measures of aggressive behavior than our post-test scores from our control group who did not receive the intervention, then we might be able to say that our intervention or our treatment program it is pretty effective. And there's a lot more that goes into that, but that's just a very brief kind of good example of how a threat to internal validity might damage our results, might make us question our results more, and a way to control for that by having this control group. So in addition to the internal validity issue, it really deals with to what extent can the intervention or the treatment group account for the results rather than the extraneous information or extraneous influences, such as the environment of the detention center. So in addition to internal validity, there's also external validity. Now, external validity really deals with the idea of generalizability. So to what extent can our findings generalize to other populations or settings or circumstances? So say that we find that this treatment program is effective for these girls in this detention center. What if we pull our treatment and give it to girls in a public school? Would the same findings occur? Would our treatment program decrease aggressive behaviors in girls in a school to the same degree? That's the idea of external validity. Now, finally, the last one I'm going to talk about is construct validity. And construct validity really deals with this idea about whether the intervention actually, say we find that the intervention is responsible for the change, so the treatment program actually works, and we have data to support this in different settings and with different populations and all of this good stuff. What specific aspect of this treatment program caused the change? That's the construct validity question. So is it that it helps kids kind of pause and think before they immediately react? Is it that it helps the kids kind of understand another person's perspective in the altercation and makes them react less aggressively? Or is it something else? And that's really what construct validity gets to. So there's internal validity, dealing with to what extent does the intervention account for the results. There's external validity or generalizability, and then there's construct validity. If the treatment or if the experiment does actually work, why? So those are the three main types of validity that are outlined in the slides that I encourage you to look at. There's also another type of validity called statistical validity that I encourage you to read about in your text, but we'll talk more about that as we get into the statistics portion of the course. So that concludes this portion of the lecture for Module 2. And if you have any questions about anything I've talked about, or you have any questions about anything in the slides, please do feel free to contact me. And I look forward to reading your responses to the discussion threads. This week I will try to add to the discussion a little bit more frequently than I did last week as we're starting to get into more of the specifics about these studies. So please do feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will see you next week.